Hello everyone, welcome to Asian Digest on ATN. I'm your host, Daman Dillon, and my guest today is no stranger to the ATN studios. Now he's very passionate about educating people about personal injury, and with 8 years of experience in the field, he is a leader in the industry. Today in studio, I have Mr. Nainesh Kotak from Kotak Law. Well, welcome back.
Thank you.
Great to have you here. And most importantly, I know your past shows with us have been very informative to people.
Thank you.
Let's talk about any changes. I know it's been a couple months since we've had you here, and the industry is always changing. So since the last time we've had you, have there been any major changes that people need to be aware about?
Yes, there have been changes, and they're not good. So I'll go through that.
Okay.
I've had 20 years experience in the field. The 8 years is 8 years of winning the Top Choice Award for the Best Personal Injury Law Firm in Mississauga. So the changes. I'll just give an overview of the two systems that are in place for compensation in personal injury cases, and then I'll take us to the latest changes, which, again, are not good. So we have what's called a two-tier system for compensation. We have a no-fault system where benefits are paid according to statute. And this came in the 1990s. It was an idea that we can help stabilize premiums and compensate people who may have been at fault in an accident. We also have the fault system, the pure negligence type of system, where people sue for their pain and suffering, and they sue for their income loss and their future care. So what happened since the 1990s with the coming into the no-fault system is the rights under the fault system for pain and suffering and for income loss, future care, have been eroded to allow for an increase in the no-fault benefits. And what we have found happen, particularly, I would say, in the last 5 years, maybe probably even 10 years, is the taking away of rights under the no-fault system in addition to the taking away of victims' rights under the fault system. So the latest changes are quite significant. So in 2010, legislation was enacted, and some of the key points are as this. So before, for medical rehabilitation, for example, under the no-fault system, claimants would have $100,000 of medical rehab benefits. That was reduced to $50,000. And if there was a minor injury, which the insurance industry has tried to classify most injuries as minor injury, it's $3,500. Attendant care, that is where somebody comes in or you're paying someone to look after you if you need help dressing, changing, showering, was reduced from $72,000 to $36,000. Okay? That was just some of the changes that happened. So there's new changes that have occurred now and that will occur after first reading in the provincial parliament. To the no-fault system, what's going to happen is the medical rehab benefit is going to combine with the attendant care benefit to be $65,000 instead of having the 50 plus the 36. And for the most severe of accidents, the catastrophic cases, instead of having $1 million for attendant care and $1 million for med rehab, that's going to combine to $1 million. And that may seem like a lot of money, but for somebody who is become a quadriplegic or has a brain injury and needs 24-hour care, that will be eliminated or used up very quickly. Another change that already has happened, and this we're talking about really August 1st, 2015. For pain and suffering awards, there's a deductible. And that's been in place since the 1990s, and it's slowly increased and increased. It used to be $30,000. What the insurance industry did is they lobbied the government to say, look, we want to increase the deductible to deal with the cost of living, inflation. So instead of $30,000, the deductible should be, I believe it's just slightly over $36,000, just under $37,000. And not only is that deductible now it's in force, but on January 1st next year and January 1st each subsequent year, what will happen is that deductible is going to go up by inflation. So it'll go up to $40,000, $41,000, or what have you. And when a jury awards money for pain and suffering, they don't know there's a deductible. So what happens is maybe there's an award of $40,000 or $50,000, but a significant amount of money is kept by the insurance industry by way of this deductible. Why is this unfair? It is unfair. Why? Well, income replacement benefits, they haven't gone up in years, since I think 2003 at $400, the max was $400 a week. There's inflation, people's wages have gone up, their income loss has gone up, but that cap is still there. So I'm very passionate about this. I find the changes to be very one-sided and very difficult for the victims, very difficult for the lawyers who advocate for them. But in a nutshell, that's what we're dealing with.
You're right, it sounds very much one-sided. So maybe can you explain how these changes even came to be?
Right. So there's a 5-year review under the Insurance Act where there's a consultation, supposed consultation, with stakeholders. So the insurance industry has, I would say, the bulk of the input, but you have the Ontario Trial Lawyers Association, you have chiropractic associations, physicians, who will give an input as to what changes might be needed. The government then will table legislation. Some are done by regulation, where there really doesn't have to be a vote in the legislature on this. Regulations can change. And that is the process every 5 years. The difficulty is, really the threat over the government is premium increase. That's a big election issue, and it always is. If the insurance industry increases premiums or applies for premiums to be increased, a government could lose. And that is always the threat over the government when it comes to these changes. The insurance industry is saying, look, our costs are X, our profits are Y, it doesn't match up, that's what they say, okay? But it doesn't match up, and we need to do more cuts. And I find that despite all the lobbying on behalf of victims of accidents, the opposite side, the lobbying is much greater, and the threat of premium increases is fundamental to politicians and to stay in power. And they tend to enact legislation that really has been suggested by the insurance industry. And it's very unfortunate.
So we need to, I know our viewers are going to have lots of questions, so we're going to clarify little things. We got to take a little break. So folks, don't go anywhere. Lots more coming up right after this. Welcome back to Asian Digest on ATN. I'm your host, Dylan. Still chatting with Mr. Nainesh Kotak from Kotak Law. Okay, so we just talked about these new changes that are taking place. Unfortunately, not positive. But it's good to know that if consumers are in that situation, they're a little bit aware about these changes. But these changes are going to happen regardless. It's already taking place. Some have already taken place. Some are coming up. How can you help them?
Thank you. More and more, it is important for people then who are injured to get legal representation. Because the Insurance Act is almost like the Income Tax Act. It is very complicated. The regulations are complicated. The dispute resolution mechanism is complicated. And now that people's rights and ability to get compensation are being eroded even more, now more than ever, you need a good lawyer, a law firm that's going to really advocate for that person to find a way to get them fairly compensated within the system that's in place. And we do just that. What we do is every case stands on its own. Each person has their own individual injuries, their own needs. Some are psychological injuries, some are physical injuries, or a combination of both. We listen to the client. We have a free consultation. We listen to what has happened to them, how the incident has happened, how the accident has happened, how it's affected them. And we then, if it's a car accident, for example, we put in their accident benefit application with their own insurance company. We put the other driver on notice that there's going to be an action for the loss. And it's a long process. But our idea, our goal is to really be there communicating with the client, email, telephone, and meetings to advance their claim. To advance their claim not only monetarily, but to make sure they're getting the treatment that they need. If there's issues with their treating providers, to help them out in terms of that communication, so that in the long term, they get better as much as possible, and they get the most compensation possible for their case. It's not hopeless just because there are changes to the legislation. There still is compensation, but one has to be much more diligent in the way they go about getting that compensation.
Let's talk about timeline, because I
Yes.
always feel like in these cases, regardless of how severe the accident is, time is of the essence. So let's just clarify for our viewers. So let's say they have an accident, let's say a
Yes.
car accident. Should they first deal with the insurance company, see the judgment, and then come to see you? Or should this be at the same time? When should basically essentially they should come see you?
Well, it's obviously after an accident, the first priority is safety. Get yourself in a safe situation so there's no subsequent accidents. Okay, get the police involved. I do not recommend dealing with the other driver directly because sometimes injuries surface later on. Sometimes vehicle damage is greater than you thought. So I recommend getting the police involved, at least having that documented report. Okay, if you're able to take witness statements, pictures of it. I know sometimes that's difficult and it's understandable that cannot be done. Getting medical attention when needed, whether it be the hospital, going to the doctor. Those are what I would call the safety issues that need to be dealt with quickly. There's an obligation to tell the insurance company there's been an accident, let them know what happened. But yes, then go to a lawyer if you're injured and you need someone to advance your claim. Go to the lawyer sooner than later. Of course,
They don't have to wait for the insurance company to make a judgment. They can come to you at the same time.
Absolutely. It really depends what you mean by judgment. I mean, they may be dealing with the property damage on their own
In terms of a payout, so if they've decided on their own, okay, we've assessed your accident and we've decided we're going to pay out X amount or award for, let's say, treatment X amount. Should they wait to hear from the insurance company? Because I feel like sometimes people think, hey, insurance companies just get a bad rep. Maybe they actually will pay me what I deserve, or should they come see you?
Insurance companies will not pay out a settlement just like that. In fact, under the no-fault scheme, they cannot settle a case for at least a year. And in my experience, what repeatedly happens over time is eventually they may pay for some treatment initially. They probably will put someone in the minor injury guideline unless they have some fractures. And then they'll cut off the benefits, sending people to assessments with doctors who they prefer. So my suggestion is go to a lawyer as soon as possible, to really advocate for the rights, protect protect the person's rights in the case of a situation where the insurance company is denying benefits. So certainly do not wait that 1 year. I don't think it's a good idea. At least going to a lawyer, having a free consultation, having to understand your rights, and then making an educated decision. Are you hurt enough that you want representation? Or not. That's the way one would approach this.
And hopefully our viewers have seen our previous shows with you, that they're aware that it's no obligation to them to come see you, correct?
Exactly. Our consultations are free. And in fact, what we do, we realize that people simply do not have the money to pay for legal services on an ongoing basis in an accident case. These cases often take a number of years to resolve. We wait till the end. We come to a percentage agreement and we take our fees at the end. We're on the same side as the client, and I wait to get paid. What we do is we spend money on disbursements, getting medical records, getting medical reports, and I recover that at the end. That way it takes that financial burden off the victim. Already they're dealing with issues where maybe they cannot work, or if they work, they can't work to the capacity that they used to. They have to replace their car. There's all kinds of financial issues that do arise. And what we do is we try to help cushion that blow, so they're not paying money out of pocket and they're getting money at the end.
Absolutely. Okay, so there's so many different types of claims that can come up. So I want us to talk about maybe some of the claims that you've been seeing on your desk, but we got to take another little break. Okay. So don't go anywhere. Lots more coming up right after this. Welcome back to Asian Digest on ATN. I'm your host, Daman Dillon, chatting with Mr. Nainesh Kotak of Kotak Law. Okay, so winter is coming.
Yes.
Fall is already here, winter is coming, and I know I feel like this might be a busy time for you. We've talked about car accidents a little bit, but with winter, road conditions change, and even people on foot, injuries can occur, right? So talk to us about the different types of cases you see come across your desk.
Thank you. We have talked about car accidents, so we do represent people who have been injured in accidents, and you're correct. Sometimes in the winter, the volume of accidents does go up because of the change in the road conditions. We also represent people who have been injured in slip and fall incidents. And we do see more of these cases in the winter, often in parking lot situations where somebody's going shopping and they get out of their car and they fall due to ice and snow in the parking lot. So obviously, as a safety precaution, we ought to be aware that there potentially is snow and ice on the ground, and even if it's been plowed, there still might be residual ice, and wear the appropriate footwear and just always be cautious about it. But when an incident does happen, it's important again to go to a lawyer, because there's limitation periods. If you fall on a city sidewalk, there's notice periods that need to be dealt with immediately. And if it's even on a regular sidewalk where it's part of a plaza or in a condominium building, there are limitation periods. So very important, if you fall on city property, put them on notice immediately. Most cities have a website. You can go on and put your claim in terms of what happened. If it's a mall situation, certainly let the mall know so they're aware that there was a fall if you can. Sometimes the injuries are so serious that the person is just off to the hospital. Again, going to a lawyer, making the right claim. And the reason it gets really difficult is often there's contractual obligations on the part of, say, a snow removal cleaning service. So they are contracted by the plaza. So when a person falls, they think it's the plaza's fault. But it might not necessarily be that way. It might be the subcontractor or the contractor and so on and so forth. So we do that investigation and make the claim against the appropriate party to get compensation. Some of these injuries you see in slip and falls are quite horrific. There's tibial fractures, knee fractures, head injuries, broken wrists, because the body contorts in all different positions when you fall unexpectedly. And there's income loss, there's a lot of pain, and we're there to help. We're there to help making sure that the claim is done right and people get compensated fairly for that. So we do see, again, more slip and falls, certainly in the winter.
Quick question for you.
Yes.
Let's say you have a fall. See, it's different from a car accident, because of the car accident, typically here in Ontario, police come right away. There's usually other drivers going by. Slip and fall, have you ever had cases where the person has a hard time proving it? What if you're walking a parking lot, as you mentioned, and no one's around, and you dust yourself up and go, okay, I'm okay to go home, and then that's when you realize your injuries are much worse. What are some of your recommendations for somebody that's in this situation to make sure they cover themselves?
That's a very good question, and I've seen this happen. When people fall down, sometimes they're embarrassed. Okay, if they cannot get up, they have a broken ankle or what have you, then they're going to be stuck, and people hopefully will come to the rescue. But sometimes you get a situation where you fall, you're embarrassed, you've hurt your hand, it's swelling a bit, but you think you're okay, and then later on you go home, it swells up more, you go to the doctor, it turns out to be a fracture. We're embarrassed to say I fell, you just want to dust yourself off. But we have to kind of go against that instinct, because yes, there will be an issue sometimes. Did you really fall? And if you fell, did you really fall where you say you fell?
Exactly.
And what was the condition like? So if possible, get a picture of the site where the person fell, if there's witness names, and get the names. And it's not always possible. Or later on, for example, the injury is sort of dealt with, it's casted, and get a family member go with you and take a picture of where you fell, because the condition may well be the same. If it's a grocery store, they probably would clean it up, but definitely tell them, and they should be alerted at the time of the fall, because they have usually internal reporting mechanisms. They'll take an internal report, they'll put a wet sign up. So that's very important. I've had cases where the stores put up a wet sign after the person fell and try to say it was there before. So really, it's, you've got to be vigilant and looking after your rights and making sure you take witness names or get pictures if possible. And again, look, that's a perfect world, and it's not always possible to do that, but where it is, I would suggest to do it.
Absolutely. Okay, so switching over, you are a leader in the industry, and you're actually now getting recognized. I know you don't do it for the recognition, but it's really nice that you're being honored. So talk to us. You just received an award.
Yes.
Yeah,
so we were voted again, and this is the 8th year running, as the best personal injury law firm in Mississauga.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And this award is going to be presented in this November 2015 at a gala. So we have a table at that gala, and I'll be speaking that day as well. So it's something we're really proud of. This award it's not just willy-nilly given. It's done by voting, and people really don't take the time to vote unless they mean it, I think. We have it hard enough getting people out to elections. So to vote for something like this, they really must mean it. And it's something that we take great pride in. we look at it, we must be doing something right to help people, and we are always striving to improve, and that's why we love to communicate with people, get suggestions on ways to communicate even better with people. We have social media, we communicate that way, we deal with our clients by email, obviously over the phone and in meetings, but it's something we're proud of, and we're in fact, my firm is expanding. I've hired, I think since the last time I've come on, there's 2 more lawyers. We're actually expanding the office as well, getting more space. Doing this so we can really help people, and we're finding people are recognizing us out there, and that's really appreciated.
And obviously, I know you deal with a diverse clientele,
Yes.
so you do have staff that speak in a number of languages, correct?
That's correct. We have staff who speak Punjabi, Hindi, Italian, I'm trying to think of the others. I believe we have Spanish, Mandarin speaking as well, and it really just reflects the diverse nature of our community at large, and we have that in our firm, and I find that very useful because our clients are really diverse language-wise and ethnically as well. Yes.
And I think that's one of the biggest challenges for a lot of newcomers here, where they come from a country where they're not used to having personal injury lawyers or even dealing with the claim, and then with language issues, like I'm sure everyone can imagine having that situation and not knowing what to do. So for viewers that want to get in touch with you, what is the best way?
Right. Well, the best way, telephone number is 905-755-890. Please check out our website, kotaklaw.com. All our 1-800 number is there. Our email addresses are there as well, and the bios of the lawyers and the various support staff, in addition to a number of our interviews, are all on that website. So I encourage the viewer to please check that out.
Great having you here. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you so much.
And everyone, make sure to check out kotaklaw.com for more information. That brings us to the end of today's show. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm your host, Dillon, signing off.